Okay, so if I can rein in some order, even though I'm mostly for the attendees bouncer, I'll also be our panelist bouncer if I have to. Drew, if you want to kind of take control here and just kind of start.
Yeah, we have everyone in.
I mean, we got 47, which I'm pretty impressed that like this is a pretty good percentage show up rate for an online event where it's like you could walk up to the computer and just like open a different tab instead and just not do this. So I'm thankful everyone's here. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you all so much for coming out. Hopefully you're in the right place. We're going to talk about game audio today with some folks, many of which have wonderful hair. First thing I wanted to do is introduce myself. I'm Drew. I'm on the board for IGDA LA. So is Chris and Tiffany and Brittany, who may or may not be unmuted. I don't know if we have any other board members here.
Muted.
And I just want to go over a couple of events that are coming up for us if you want to attend any of those. The first one is a Future of Online Game Technology. It's sort of a series of ours. This is the second one in the series where Riot's Valorant team will come in and go ahead.
Do you have a slide you can show for this, even if it's just like our open of panel slide, just so you kind of dominate?
Nope, I'm just being bad, and I wasn't sharing the slides I was clicking through. The Future of Online Game Technology is sort of a series we're doing, talking about online services and a lot of engineering talk going on in there. It's going to be a talk from Riot's Valorant team about how they scaled for day one for Valorant. The next thing that we have coming up, and that's early October, late October or mid-October, we'll have board applications and board elections if you want to join the IGDA LA board. There'll be a Google form that you can sign up on and fill out some information. That'll go out through our mailing list, so presumably, and our Facebook. So presumably, if you made it here, you can also make it there. And without further ado, let's do some intros on the panelists.
Yeah, hi, hello everybody. I'm honored to see so many familiar faces in this good Zoom. I am a sound designer for games living up in smoky Seattle, and I work primarily on narrative indie games. That is my main focus. That is what I love to do. But even more so than that nowadays, I love to help other artists succeed in the industry so that so many people don't need to struggle anymore. And we're going to talk all about that today and how we can all make that climb in the world of great game audio a lot more pleasant. And we have the best people ever today to help with that. But I'll be your moderator.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chase Bethea. Let's see. Well, been working in the industry for about 9 years, doing a lot of things in that time, and still trying to climb to where I am today in the career of game audio overall. Some could also arguably say I've been in it for almost like 20 years, but that wouldn't be true professionally. So just about 9 years would be good. I shipped about 18 titles in that time, and yeah, primarily work with like indie developers and a couple AAA developers and such, but most notably known for my scores of I Can't Escape Darkness or Aground, which has about like 3 million players, which I've been doing a lot of talks about recently. So it's been really fun, and I'm glad to be here on this panel and share some good knowledge and nuggets with you with a semi-smoky California that I caused for Akash.
Thanks, Chase. Chel, you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Chel Wong. I'm a composer in not smoky Boston. Thank goodness. I think I'm the only one in the East Coast out of this panel. Anyways, I worked on a game called Kine, which is a puzzle indie game. It's about 3 instruments trying to become famous. I guess I should do the bragging. I have an award for that game. I was nominated for a Gang Award. I didn't win the Gang Award, which is totally fine. Who did? It was Call of Duty Mobile. Anyways, I also, besides working on that, I work at a studio right now called Zelgor Games. It's a mobile game studio working on a couple titles, as well as I freelance for some other indie games. Outside of writing music, I'm a co-organizer for Game Audio Boston, which is a meetup group. I run a charity album every year called the Charity EP Jam. And I also am a head curator for Boston Fig for the audio department.
Cool.
Like you lost us.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. Or hi, everyone, I should say. We're StrikeCast. My name is Thomas.
I'm Seth.
We've been in game audio now for, what, 3 years almost? Yeah. We're based out of LA. And currently we're working on a bunch of stuff that's about to ship. So I'm going to name drop. We've got Party Animals, check it out on Steam, coming out soon. Also, Song of Iron coming out on Xbox, next gen Xbox and stuff. So yeah, it's pretty exciting. Glad to be here.
Likewise.
Awesome. Well, I will hand it off to our moderator then.
All right, let's get into it. So what I'm going to do, and Chris, tell me if this is not a good format to go with, but basically I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to point to the first person that I want to start taking it. But if any of you want to chime in, also go for it. I'm not just going to be tossing it just to one person at a time, but I'm just going to direct it the first time.
I want to stress that when he says all of you, he refers to the panelists. This is still a panel and not like a round table structure of 50 beings.
A 50-person round table where we all answer the same question. So we're going to start more broad. So I'm curious, considering all of you have a different breadth of experience, I'm very curious, as you've been in the game audio world or media audio world for a little bit now, what's a mindset or skill that you see kind of lacking in a lot of people who are trying to break into the industry that maybe people don't know that they should be developing, something that they should be thinking about, something that they should be focused on that maybe just hasn't entered their purview or just doesn't come up in their day-to-day, but is something that they should be focusing on. So, Chel, I'm going to throw it to you first.
Okay. I think if the right now, this is the first thing that comes to my mind. I think as a millennial, we are taught to be almost too polite and too humble. I think sometimes people are kind of, they self-deprecate themselves to a point where it actually becomes detrimental, and people just kind of, they're in the prep phase, and they never actually exit the prep phase. They're like, I need to do all these things and all this and all this and all that in order to start like trying to actually find work, in order to actually begin doing certain things. Like, there are plenty of people who have never worked on a video game, and their music's incredible. Like, no one taught me how to write music. No one taught me how to mix. I sang into a phone and I put it in Finale and I put it out, and the people I wrote it for, they're like, wow, this sounds great. And so like, no one taught me. There's so many people that never learn. I have to go to grad school. You don't have to go to grad school. There's so much that you can already do, and you're like, chances are you're ready to start. You're probably past the ready to start. You should have started yesterday. You might as well start today.
Nice. I love it. Anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, I would say that I don't think a lot of homework is being done about people that kind of done things before they get into the industry. They just focus on like, I want to get into games, I want to do this. But if you look behind me on this shelf here, that whole shelf right there is like game audio books. A lot of people wrote those books, and not only game audio books, like the one above it has some game design books and some history for that stuff. Do your homework. Your homework is going to help you actually do better in the industry. I can guarantee it. I only can speak from experience because I read through half of a book and I ended up going to a conference and I was like, hey, you're this person. Hey, you're this person, this person. These people were so impressed with my knowledge of understanding their titles and understand where they came from, understand what they could do. And the information is out there. It's like you have the internet. For most of us, it's free. So just go ahead and do yourself a favor and learn a little bit more about those who kind of help you pay for the way. And your process actually might be a little bit easier along the way, because they're going to be impressed that you actually took the time to do a couple other things and you were more self-sufficient to just educate and be well aware and be cognizant of those things. And that's it. That's all I have to say. Just continue to do your homework. Always keep learning, and it's going to help you always, always, always.
Yeah, I second that. It's very important to know the industry, going beyond game audio itself. Just knowing the games industry, and like I said, it's all online. Everyone's happy to share. There's so much information out there. It really pays to be in tune with what's going on around you.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. I think, considering I've been doing this for like 11 years now, I think this is one of the key industries that if you either play the games or engage with the community, that sort of thing, it is a monstrous help in everything that you do. You can talk about, health systems in games, and that can literally get you a job. It's insane how being a nerd now is cool and beneficial.
To interject a meta question real quick about questions and how you want to go throughout. And it's totally up to you, Akash / panel as a whole. We had a question and someone else asked, like, hey, do you want questions like thrown in chat throughout? Do you want to save questions to end? Are you watching the chat? Do you want Drew or I to chime in with them? How do you want questions to kind of integrate?
Let's do them at the end because I have a list, and then we can open it up if that works.
Cool. Yeah, in which case, I'll also say that if people want to put questions in chat, we may not get to them immediately, but we'll go back and scroll through that when we do get to the end. Cool.
Amazing. So good. Okay, that's awesome. All right, so now that we have kind of a broad mindset view, let's start narrowing in a bit to our first ever paid gigs, because that's a big moment for a lot of us, and I think I'm gonna rack my memory here. Chase, I think yours was one called Electron Flux. Is that right?
Dang! Points in the bank. No one's ever got that before.
Yes. I do not F around. So let's start with you, Chase, then. How did you get that first paid gig? How did it come about? Did it yield other paid gigs? What was the whole process? How did it feel to also get that first paid project?
Oh, honestly, wow. So I bought a book called The Complete Guide to Game Audio by Aaron Marks, second edition, because he has a third edition out now. Classic, yes, absolutely. Was kicking myself in the donkey for not getting the first edition in the 90s, but that's neither here nor there. Bought that book, bought the MIDI guide to orchestration, and then in half of the book, got halfway read to the part where you need to be going to conferences, you need to be online, have an online presence, and that was it. I closed the book. I didn't even finish the book for years, and I just started posting. I already knew I kind of had the sound. At that time, I think it was gamedev.net, and I just pitched for like a game. I had some music for it already written. They really liked it, and then I was persistent with the follow-ups and the correspondence. Ended up coming down to the pitch of just me, and I ended up writing a second demo just because, at that time I was in school and I had the time to kind of do it, and I landed the gig, first paid gig, first ship game. And the feeling that happened with me when I had my little like Android phone is like testing the music with the sound on the APK and just hearing your own music in the game. And I was like, wow, I did it. Like, I didn't read this whole book. I don't know what I was doing, but I figured it out, and it just felt so great. And then having the check, and I still have the check that I think I framed it from like the first one just to kind of commemorate the experience.
Love that. Anyone else want to talk about their first paid and how they got it?
We actually, I think we did a game jam, correct? And we met a group. They were doing kind of simple mobile games and doing one in the game jam and kind of trying to expand to more.
It was a Buildbox game jam because it was all like one of their promo. I don't know. I think Buildbox 2 just came out or was about to come out, something like that. Yeah. We actually did a handful of games for this company until they stopped paying us. But no, it was a good learning experience. We knew what it was when we got into it. So, yeah.
Small but fun.
Yeah,
and it helps to have something out there. Even if it's just that.
Yeah, and exactly like Chase was saying, like it was great to see. Oh wow, that's our thing.
Yeah,
it's happening there, even if the game is small and not so great. It's good to be there. So yeah, game jams, do them, especially online. I mean, that's how we met these people. I think it started from a Discord chat or something like that. So
I say this all the time.
Yeah,
it works.
Yeah, so a through line I'm seeing is be active, be in the community. And Chel, you kind of hinted at something earlier that there are people who can just crush, who are amazing skill-wise, but never kind of do anything out publicly. And thus, often that doesn't yield any sort of work. And some of you know him, Ryan Ike. He has the best analogy in that you could walk into a closet with a skateboard and do the sickest like 900 Benihana that anyone's ever done in the world, and then walk out of the closet and open the door and be like, what'd you think? They'll be like, think of what? I didn't see anything. And that's what most audio people tend to be doing. They're just sitting at home making amazing stuff and then quietly being like, why won't anyone pay me? It's because they don't know we exist. And that's a big part of what we do, is making sure people know we're alive and can provide them stuff, provide them music, provide them sound. Chel, did you want to chime in, or all good?
What's my first paid gig, Akash?
I actually don't know. I have no idea.
Akash.
Shameless.
It's called GB2's Costume Combat, and it's
how would I know that?
Because I got it from your house. Anyways, what I did and what I was doing in the before times is that I would network. I would go to 5 to 6 meetups for every month. I would do it. I did that every month for like 3 years, and it took me like 4 months to find a gig. And I did game jams before that, and yeah, I just basically did a bunch of game jams, and I worked on this other game that was for free essentially. And then until I finally met a guy that wanted to hire me, and then after that. After like a month after that contract was finalized, I met Gwen, and then I worked on Kine. So that was essentially what I did, and here I am today. And I like legit, I got super lucky. But at the same time, even though I did get ridiculously lucky, I also was networking 5 to 6 times every month. So I can't just write it completely like, oh, you know, I don't know. I mean, I was working my butt off. So you only get as many chances as you play.
Totally. There is something to be said about being in front of people. So you mentioned, you know, it took 4 or 5-ish months somewhere in that zone. And I think for all of us, it's like totally different time frames on how long this takes. A lot of people will ask, I think all of us, okay, how long before I'm a full-time pro? And that's a tough question to answer because it's different for literally everybody. So to give people a little more perspective on how timelines can work, how long this can take, how short it can be, all that sort of stuff. What was your career like 2 years ago, just 2 years ago? Maybe you were breaking in or maybe you were just starting out. And how much has it changed in just 2 years? And let's start with Thomas and Seth.
Practically non-existent 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Now we just spend, you know, as much time inside as we used to, but we get paid for it. So that helps. How's it changed, Seth?
I would honestly say it's kind of hard to remember the perspective because it feels kind of similar. But now that we're looking back, we realize we were putting so much into these like games that didn't have that much promise and really like hoping, and that it doesn't feel like that's changed that much.
Again, getting out, obviously Corona's made it hard.
Yeah.
Getting out there and getting to all the meetings, but the progression in terms of how the clients have changed as you're sort of climbing the ladder.
That's kind of what I was touching on.
Is great because it, at least for us, I mean, again, we're probably the newest of this fold. The excitement's not gone. I hope it never goes, but it's always so exciting that the next game is always, you know, that much bigger, is asking that much more out of you, or it's pushing you to do something you've never done before. Like, we wrote an aria a year ago. I never thought I'd write an aria. Like, I'm a rock musician, more or less, so that was kind of cool.
And it's the places we never thought we'd go, and that's the best part.
Yeah, working with, you know, opera singers and stuff like that, and it's crazy.
So I don't know if that answered the question.
No, it's great. Who else?
Should I?
Go for it, Chel.
I was smack dab in the middle of Kine. It was a 2-year cycle. And this was like the end of the first year. I wanted to double check something. I wrote a song when I hit 100 followers. It was published on Spotify. It's actually invisible. It's in my SoundCloud September something of 2 years ago.
Amazing.
So I had 100 followers 2 years ago, and a lot has changed. I know a lot more people have credits now, which is kind of cool.
An award?
Yeah, I guess so. And now I'm salaried, which is like really, really, really nice. Having a salary is nice. Like,
yeah, it is. Like, so I'll just be totally transparent. 2 years ago, I was working at Sam Ash, minimum wage. The reason I was there is because there was a project I was on, and I'll just be completely transparent. I was gonna be making at least $2,000 a month for this game, and I met them at GDC. After going to GDC for like 5 whatever years, finally met someone who wanted to hire me full time, pay, all that good stuff, and then they lost the funding for the publisher, so I only got paid 1 month out of that. Didn't know what I was gonna do. Had to pay rent. Figured I need gear and I need a job. What's up, Sam Ash? How you doing? And just did everything I possibly could I've already been kind of shopping there like years and years before, since I was a teenager. So just kind of helped that I was kind of back in the area. But honestly, like, that was the best thing I could have possibly done, is work for like a music like type of thing company, because then it led to other musicians kind of coming in and wanting to kind of like hire me like for extra money. So I was doing some live sound mixes. I actually ended up mixing a album of a very famous jazz artist's son. That was a really good relationship out of that. And then came the contract to at least work full time on the ground for at least a year. Nice. And that was 2 years ago.
It's a lot of change in 2 years for basically everybody here. It's radical, and you really can't predict it, right? I think, Chase, for what you just were talking about, you couldn't have predicted all of that happening.
No, I did not see that coming.
So that's great. Like that is actually something that can be encouraging for a lot of us, because it can sometimes feel like an absolute slog, and then 1 hour happens and your life changes. You really don't know when that time is happening, and you can't anticipate for it. So considering it's such a sine wave with what we do in any sort of like artistic field, and we've all worked professionally in it. So I'm curious what all of your thoughts are now that you're in it, now that you've worked in it professionally. What's been something that maybe you didn't anticipate, or something being a very surprising thing to you now that you're a pro? It can be good or bad. It can be something about working in the field. It can be something about networking, something about gear, literally anything. But Chase, let's start with you, considering you just finished off at a great point.
That people still want our work for cheap. I'll just be straight up. I'm just going to keep it real like they do. And it's like, how does this isn't quantified? Like this is art. It's a collaborative art form. It still goes stuff, and it still blows my mind that people just want something for nothing. So that's something that as a pro, or that even some of the upper pros typically aren't working that much. That's actually really mind blowing thing.
Chel, let's go with you.
Can you rephrase the question one more time?
Yeah. Is there anything that now that you're a pro, now that you've been working in the field, that you didn't anticipate seeing? Like you're like, oh, now I'm a pro. Oh, I didn't know this thing would occur. I didn't know I needed this piece of gear. I need to network in this way, or talk to these people, or be in this location. Anything that's come up that's been surprising that maybe you didn't see coming. Can be good or bad.
Let's see. I think the first thing for me is like I didn't expect to do mobile games, and then like now it's a job. I think there's like some really eye-opening stuff. Like we boothed with Epic at GDC, and there's a whole echelon of stuff that I didn't even expect. There's basically so many facets to the game industry that you don't know about until you see it, and it feels like a flower blooming where you just see like the next layer of petals, and there's just more and more, and you're like, well, let's see what's beyond that, I guess. I don't know. That's all I have right now, at least.
That's a good answer. I like that. How about StrikeCast, folks?
I guess the thing that comes to mind for me is I had like a general awareness of how games worked, but just how much goes into that, and the fact that I feel like a lot of people talk about this, but the fact that like now seeing a AAA game, being like, how did this even how did someone finish it?
Yeah, well,
like how much time it takes for such little progress with the teams we work with.
All the moving parts, just that's why games get delayed.
Yeah, gives you a nice perspective on that.
Yeah,
so that's what jumped to mind for me, at least. I don't know if you have anything else.
Yeah, more or less the same. Yeah. Just try hard to keep a schedule, but
yeah. And then
everyone's trying hard to keep schedule, and then no one can keep to schedules. So that's a thing.
I realize I missed money. Just how much money there is in things. Just how much things cost. Everything is so much bigger than you expect.
Yeah,
that is a very good point.
They still want it for cheap.
Yeah,
and they still want it for cheap. So Thomas and Seth, you just brought up a really good point of everyone's got schedules. Boy, they ain't keeping them. Yeah. And especially now in 2020 with everything that's happening. So I'm curious for all of you, as best as you can. Obviously, no one can be at 100% perfection all of the time. So I'm curious how you're managing, especially with projects getting canceled due to COVID or anything like that. I think all of us work from home anyway, so that's probably not that much of a shift. I'm an extreme introvert, so I didn't see anyone before the lockdown happened. So that's unchanged for me personally. But I'm curious how you're all handling all of this, all the changes. Maybe all your teams are now working from home instead of working in a studio, how you're communicating with them, how you're dealing with projects falling through. suddenly. So let's start with you, StrikeCast, and then we can go on from there.
We've been lucky. Nothing's fallen through from COVID game-wise. We do some other stuff outside of games as well, and some of those did die, unfortunately. But who knows if they'll come back or whatever. It's funny, teams that you would think would be more robust working away from the regular schedule turned out not to be, and those that you didn't think would ended up working more efficiently. So it's been hard because, we're a small team and we're trying to take on as much as we can. But at the same time, it's always like, they're all going to finish roughly the same time, but I don't know exactly what I'm doing this week.
Or they think they are.
Or they think they are. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, we try and create schedules for ourselves and stick to them, and it's good for a while, but we're so subject to like what we're getting and how those projects are going on their own terms that like they fall apart, and it still ends up us late hours, early hours, 14-hour days, and then nothing.
Well, that's the next thing I will say. Yeah. So yes, we all do work from home or did beforehand, but obviously because of the new normal, those hours are a bit flexible. And that's another thing that we found. We're not, before COVID, even though we work from home, we tried to have like regular days, if that makes sense. Sometimes now it's like, fine, I won't start work till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but I'm probably not going to go to bed till 4 o'clock in the morning, right? Yeah. Which is great because I get to, do stuff in the day to an extent, all things considered. Anyway.
Chase, how about you?
Honestly, so I learned this lesson pretty about in the past 3 years, whereas in some things may fall through, but really what we were just talking about like is development and schedules and such. But I'm someone who just finds the time to like always pivot. So if there's something not happening, it's like, well, guess I'll write an album. Or, and albums actually help because then if you're pitching or doing something else or saying, hey, we need this type of style of music, or we need this, whatever, you're always prepared for that, that sound like, I need a mystery game, like a puzzle with, something about Bigfoot, or I need, we need fantasy wizards with like weird, like kind of shape and ducks and that are dancing through like VR. It's like, okay, I know exactly the sound you're looking for. I got you. Let's go ahead and do that. And so if it's even delayed, I'm at least scheduling a little bit ahead because I don't like crunch. I don't really like that. My body doesn't like it. So it's best to be a proactivator than a procrastinator.
I'm stealing that.
I came up with that like 10 years ago. But you can totally use it. And it actually helps a lot. And so I'm not doing, even if they are crunching, which shouldn't happen, God forbid and all that, I'm not crunching. I'm over here having a margarita. So I'm happy because I was proactive in my time to understand that once you're in the flow of understanding where, like how development things are, and you kind of schedule, or you at least know who you're working with, you're like, okay, well, the rule of thumb for game development is typically like, if they want to get it done in 3 months, I'm going to double, almost triple that to like 6 months. And I'm usually about right. So then you can kind of gauge in between, like, oh, I can ship some stuff here. I can write this album there. You can kind of move things around.
Nice. How about you, Chel? Keeping schedules.
I'm in a weird place because I feel like mine is sort of the opposite of things. I've actually had a more like because I before when I was freelancing, I literally have no idea how many hours I put into my work because I would do work whenever. Like I would do work at 2 a.m. I would do work at like noon. I would work at all these weird hours. Now that I'm at a company, I have a 20-hour work week and I keep track of my hours. So I actually have like a significantly better idea how my schedule is. But one, I still work whenever I want. And also I probably have ADHD. I know I have narcolepsy. And so I have really bad energy problems. I can only work for so long before I like burn and lose focus. So I work for like 3 to 4 hours a day, and sometimes that's like in a 2-hour chunk. And then I'll work like, I'm not going to work later today, but like, let's say theoretically I work later today at like 1 a.m. I don't know if I'm feeling it. But typically I don't. And then I work 20 hours, and that's partially because I know they don't need me for longer. There's no way I would be able to fill out a 40-hour week. I'm too fast already. So that's partly how it is for me. And I don't know, it's nice. However, I'm still doing other stuff that's like work. I network. I mean, a lot of you know how much I network already.
It's a lot.
I do like 20 hours a week.
It's insane.
Okay, that's not true. I did 18 hours last week.
Oh, well, then that's nothing. That doesn't count, obviously. Jeez.
Can I jump in real quick? I have a question.
Of course.
Mitchell, how do you track it? Your actual hours? Are you using any sort of software and stuff like that?
I look when I start. I like wait for the closest 15-minute or like round to the closest 15-minute mark, and then I work. And I usually get distracted, and then when I'm like tired and I'm done, I just see where the clock is, and I like put. I mean, like if I was at a regular job, like you clock in at 9, you clock out at 5. It doesn't matter what you're doing in between. I used to be a lot more nitty gritty of like, oh, now I'm going to the bathroom. Like, no, who cares?
Well, so like when your head's in the work, so say you sit down and you're just starting a piece or whatever, right? Have you been able to notice there's like an actual time where you start to notice your brain wander? Because that's something that I found. We track how much time we spend on things, and I've got like, if it's sound design, I just stop after 40 minutes because I know that's when my brain is going to turn off. And when I say stop, I don't mean stop altogether. I mean change task, do something else just to keep it fresh, have a break, get a drink, all that sort of stuff.
I really should set more timers. Basically, my schedule looks like this. I try and get a song done in 1 week. That's usually what I try and do. Sometimes it takes longer. This most recent song, it took 2.5 weeks, but I was also doing like 9 different elements, so I don't feel bad. I try and do an entire song in 1 week. I try and do about work from 12 to 3 or 4. At some point around those hours, I start to feel burned out, and then I exercise and I do ring fit and I get sick abs and thick thighs, and then I shower. I feel refreshed. Also, because like normally, like I used to be like, oh, this is a great time to work, and then I would like work at after school, and I would be even more tired, and I would just be even more burned out. Like now, like exercise, I don't have to nap. I don't have to like literally fall. I had to take a nap before this call because I was falling asleep. Narcolepsy is not fun, but yeah, that's when I started to burn out. Around, like I work at 12-ish to 1-ish. I stop at 3-ish to 4-ish, and I exercise, and then I do some stuff, and then sometimes I work more later. That is kind of my thing. So I try and get like 3 to 4 hours. 3 to 4 hours a day, like 6 days a week, 6.5 days a week. That's kind of my deal.
Cool.
Nice. Thomas, you asked my question for me, so I'm grateful for that.
There you go. Great minds.
It's beautiful. Huh? What a great segue. So I'm very curious to hear about, for all of you, when you have, because all of us have this, those downtimes where maybe it's a week, maybe it's a month, it could be, I don't know, a year, like 2020. Ooh. When you have those downtimes that come up where you're like, I don't feel like making anything. Or even when you try over and over and over and over to make the thing and just nothing's coming out. And maybe you're on a deadline, maybe you're not, kind of depends on the situation. How do each of you deal with those sorts of situations? Let's start with Chel.
I think especially in the now times, you have to forgive yourself for not being able. I mean, like literally, the world's on fire. Literally, I'm sorry for all of you West Coasters. Stay safe, everyone. You have to forgive yourself for not being able to constantly churn out stuff. It's so easy to fall into like the freelance hustle, crushing capitalism drive. So I think allowing yourself to be okay with not being productive all the time helps you be more productive. And sometimes you just need to do a change of things. Like even if you do have a deadline, as long as you like Chase and I'm the kind of person who turned a paper in a week ahead, so I didn't have to worry about that paper for like the rest of that week. So I'm with you on that, Chase. So as long as you have the proper pacing, sometimes you just need to like change your task. If you like, hey, I'm gonna write this cute little song. It doesn't have to be anything. It doesn't have to go on the internet. I just want to write something that maybe I want to think in my head. And that sometimes that process just kind of clears the slate, clears all the muck away, and then you feel like you kind of, I don't know, it's like mental head laundry, and you feel clean.
I'm stealing proactive versus procrastinator, whatever it was, and mental head laundry, because that's very good. Chase, how about you?
I just don't write.
Awesome.
That happened in early August, and I was like, I got approached to ask to write something. And I was like, no, I'm not writing. I'm sorry. And he was like, "You're not going to write anything?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just spent. I'm not going to do anything for like a week and a half." And what I found is this is the good thing to do, because I am allowing myself, as Chel was kind of like talking as well, you're giving yourself that break. Your body's saying, "Hey, look, I don't know what else you want me to do. We've done all that we can do. So this is probably a good time to catch up on some literature, probably cut the grass, wash some dishes, all the things you could probably do inside the house, watch The Last Dance, get super inspired, or watch High Score, also great documentary. Just let your brain do something else that you don't want to, that you don't need to do. Probably put up a frame or something and just hang out. And it feels good to take the break, because you naturally, if you have the ambition and the instinct, it never goes away. The blue flame just gets a little tiny, but other things around you are going to happen more. You'll see other people start doing stuff and you'll be like, "Oh yeah, maybe I want to do something like no." And then you'll see more people maybe start doing stuff. You're like, "Oh, well, maybe I should kind of get back into it again." And then maybe you'll watch like an awesome, trinket series on Netflix. And you're like, "Whoa, okay, I don't want to do that. Gonna get back to work." Like having that break is really a good time to just refresh and come back to it. But I definitely when I don't feel like I don't do it.
I love it. How about you, Thomas and Seth?
We like deadlines. We like pressure. So
I love it.
Well, I was just going to say that you're pretty, even when we've got nothing to do, you'll always kind of sit down and just create for the sake of creating.
That is kind of where I was going as well. I like to procrastinate. So what I do, and it doesn't always work, I try and procrastinate in ways that might help me somewhere else. So I like making when I know I have to make music for something, I'll then go and make music for fun, and I'll really enjoy that process, and it'll make me more excited to then go back and do the other thing, or maybe a new perspective. And if I'm don't have a deadline, I'll feel like I should make music for fun and then not do it, because then I feel like I have to do it. So trying to trick myself into procrastinating positively instead of just not doing anything at all is kind of what I tried to do with that, at least.
I know this is going to sound terrible. I don't make music for fun anymore. I just don't. I don't want to. We have fun when we're doing stuff that I need to, and in some instances we'll work together and we'll work separately. Yeah. But in terms of burnout and wanting to do other things and having downtime, I do that. I play guitar, but just get away from. One of the big things during the whole corona and, not really having much to do was getting out of the studio when I didn't have to do studio things. I found myself sitting in here doing stuff like our taxes, and that was bad because then I resented being in the room, and that's not good. Yeah. So,
yeah, that's smart. So I'm curious, considering all of us do similar things, but different enough. And one of the most common questions I get, and maybe true of all of you too, is now that I'm entering the world of game audio, music, sound, all that sort of stuff, should I do both music and sound? Should I do just one? Can I do just one? Do I have to do sound? Do I have to do music? This is one of the most common questions I get. I know for you, StrikeCast, this will be a bit unique because you have a kind of a duo setup. So I'm really excited to hear about how you split things up and who does what and all that sort of good stuff. But Chel, let's start with you. What do you think on when you're entering the game audio world? Should you do both? Do you have to? Can you focus on the one you like more?
So the way I see things is I always think about things as the sort of hourglass approach where you start wide, you narrow in, and then once you're really famous or whatever, you're super comfortable, then you can start to broaden out and do whatever the heck you want. So in the beginning, oh, do you do both sound and music? Yeah, I do both music and sound effects. I hate sound effects. So all my sound effects are really musical, and the ones that aren't, I'm like, oh man, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. Layer, EQ, maybe. So partially you just kind of you start wide, you figure out what you want to do. Do you like this? Oh, some people a lot of sound designers turns they were musicians and then they fall in love with sound design. I didn't. I hate sound design, and now I never want to do it again, and I don't have to right now. So, especially composers, actually for sound designers too. Once you pick one, essentially, most times, people, if you actively say you do both, people kind of are iffy about that. Some people can actually do both, but typically, I'm a composer, but I also do sound design as maybe whatever. Once you pick one, for me, composer, you want to specialize into something. So like, I have a friend who does crazy glitch punk. I have a friend who does like crazy glitch punk music. I know a guy who does funk. I know someone who does great orchestral stuff. People who do chiptune. I personally, this is maybe to my disadvantage because my Spotify is a complete mess and everything's different. I don't want to be genre locked, and I'm like actually terrified of it. So what I do instead is like, I specialize in dynamic music with like dynamic layering and it's, what's the word I'm thinking of? I forgot the term because I'm tired. So I want to be like, oh, all of my stuff has layers and like new layers get added on top and stuff like that. That's what I do. So that's kind of like my specialty. And who knows, maybe I don't have to do that in the future. But I mean, I like doing it. So wide, specialize, and I'm currently in that specialized zone, but who knows? Maybe when you're Akash, you can branch out because Akash is, I mean, let's be real. He's got some Destiny experience.
So let's this isn't about me. Chase, how about you?
Yeah, it's interesting. Chel talked on a lot of different things, but I have to say that you really shouldn't do what you are not passionate about. And I highly suggest this because they'll end up like Chel and be like, I hate sound effects. But the thing about it is that if the thing about game jams again, if you do these things and you do them enough time, you'll realize that you're either liking one more than the other, or you're liking both, or you'll find that you like something else. So like for me, I'm a composer and technical sound designer. So I realize I love implementing my own music into the game engine through audio middleware or through code or whatever that may be. But I typically get asked to do sound design after I approach like the music thing. And however you label yourself is typically how you'll be remembered. So if you say composer first and sound designer second, you'll get labeled that way. You say sound designer first, composer second, you'll be labeled and introduced that way. And people will want to kind of present you as what they think you are. And so you really shouldn't have to decide between the two. You really should probably just experiment, at least starting out, figure out what you like, what you don't like, and then subtract from there. And if you find like you can do both well, then pick it up. What I have found, though, is that your composer brain is not your sound designer brain. So be aware about that early. I'm letting y'all know now so you don't have to fail at that. It will happen. You can conflate the two. You can make some sound effects more musical in a sense, and it can get a little bit more intricate. But like I said, just be cognizant about that.
Yeah, so for StrikeCast folks, how do you split it as well? Like, do you prefer to do one over the other? And if you do, how do you kind of split your work up?
We kind of know each other's strengths and just play to that.
We definitely both do both, though. Yeah. And like both a lot, actually.
It depends also, what's creeping up deadline-wise. Like, okay, well, you seem busier than I am, so I guess I'll go do this now.
Or you can't, or I need you to work on this, so I'll try and do these 4 things to get that out of the way. So there's a lot of that where it's really just picking the task that needs to be done. But I think the one thing is we both did start with the same kind of let's do both and see. And I think we do really like both of them.
Another thing just to add on to that, it's a big reason why we wanted to do the whole company thing and push StrikeCast rather than ourselves, because we didn't want to present as, we're composers, but we also do sound design, or we're sound designers, we also do composition. We just wanted to be game audio front. And also playing into what Chel was saying earlier about, I guess, being typecast. Like we didn't want to be typecast, and that's why we wanted to be branded as, hide behind our brand, I suppose.
Well, and we even play into it a bit because I think I'm technically the composer, but don't be fooled by that. I mean, I do probably more of that, but
the vast majority of the composition.
But it's not one or the other. It's definitely both. We definitely do as much as we can of both.
Because we also do the coding side of that, but I would say we enjoy that the least, but we still do it.
It's still fun getting into it, but that's been definitely the uphill battle for us, or at least it has been. But
nice. So I've two last questions before we open things up for the audience to ask. So very exciting. But before we get into all those wonderful questions, and please type them in the chat if you have any so far, or just keep them ready. But for all of you, and we'll start with Seth on this one. What are some of the best career or kind of artistic decisions you've ever made? It could literally be, I bought this guitar, or I moved to the city, literally anything.
I guess it probably would be coming to LA just because at the time I did it, I was in Santa Cruz and I had done a music program there and was kind of unsatisfied with it. So I came here to do a music program, which is where I met Thomas, and actually was Akash spoke there as well, which kind of started that path. So I would say like broad decision that, and then just sticking with it as well, because it's hard to get involved, but like anything's gonna take work, and like once you get the ball rolling, you'll be glad you stuck to one thing. So I guess I think that answers the question.
Yeah. How about you, Thomas?
More or less the same. Obviously, I wasn't involved at all in game audio in Australia. And I'm pretty sure I'm the reason you ended up coming to speak.
Yes.
Where we were.
Yeah.
That kind of, could we say that was the good idea? Because,
Oh, you.
It helped. Well, it really did.
It did, yeah.
And you've been an invaluable resource ever since. So we appreciate you, Akash. And I don't know, in terms of actually like giving people information that would be helpful to them, talk to people, ask questions, get out there, don't be shy.
Well, to jump back in, going to the first IGDA meetup, actually, we met Chris, and we
pestered him
and
for
he
a
gave us
long time.
All sorts of information. So getting out and going to the meetups, and years later, things pan out, like not being there to network and get your gig, but to just meet everyone and have fun. Like that's, I guess that too.
Yeah, take it as it comes. Be natural with it. Just enjoy.
So Chase, how about you? Best artistic / career decisions you've made?
Skipping class to go help a friend move. I have a little bit of an anecdote for this. So I was in an applied program at Moorpark College for like piano and such. And every Friday we're supposed to show up and be there. And there was an opportunity from a AAA composer that I had really just kind of pursued for an entire year after meeting him at a comic book signing. And I was really trying to become his assistant. And I didn't get that assistant thing, but I was like, you know what? It didn't work out. And I was really depressed that day. I watched the entire series of Heroes, and I won't do that again. But this person needs help moving, and I'm going to do that. And I can't say how tremendous that was for my career overall, because I made some really good friends. And those friends are still my friends today, and they're all wonderful. Everyone who helped him move that day, I'm still in contact with. Some of them are at Riot. Some of them worked at Neversoft. They're on the Guitar Hero stuff. Some of them did the God of War series on the PS2, and I think, and some of them worked on Spider-Man and stuff. And one of them became like my mentor, and they're all just my really close friends. And it was cool to have a Halloween party last year and see all of them at my house where I'm at now. So that was about 7 years ago. But overall, like I would say, like sometimes those sacrifices got to be made. And when you make those sacrifices and you look back, you're like, yeah, that was a good decision.
Nice. How about you, Chel?
I mean, that's a hard question to answer. I feel like...
That's why I asked.
I know. Artistic, I have nothing. But I mean, like at every step of my career, there's always like before I was a nonprofit, I thought I was going to be a band teacher. I failed. It was for the first time since I was in 8th grade, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and that was terrifying. I almost went to grad school for bass trombone performance. I'm not that good. I'm like, okay, but I literally saw Akash's videos about how you can freelance in game audio. I'm like, oh wait, well, and then I messaged him on Twitter, and he replied. I'm like, whoa, this famous guy replied to me. Like, what? I networked a bunch, and that's like, I guess that's still my strong suit. Like even more than writing music, I think it's like how much I'm willing to commit to my time of meeting people. For the Boston scene, it was just like every time I went to a meet, I'm like, all right, I gotta meet at least one new person every meetup. And before I knew it, people were like, man, you know everyone. I'm like, I do? At some point, you just become that person who knows everyone. And I still just keep going really strong with networking. I went to GDC. I try and do that every time. And now, like, it's so funny because how quickly the game industry becomes like, when you're a fan, you're like, oh man, that studio makes good stuff. Or like, oh, that looks cool. To be like, oh, my friend worked on that. Oh, my friend's on that team. Like, it's all of a sudden, it's just like your friends are just kind of, I don't know. I guess it's just like, the biggest thing about networking, I gotta say, is just make friends. Just talk about things that aren't even about game dev. Like, I love talking about Smash. I don't actually like talking about the game industry. I do it because it's like, yeah, that's what we have in common. But like, I've had conversations where we just talked about pizza and oyster flavor, like oyster beer. Like, what is that? I don't know. Sometimes the weird conversations are what sticks with you more so than like, how many times have I talked about like, oh yeah, so what are your thoughts on Sony versus Xbox? Like, I don't care.
It's so true. And one through line I want to point out for everyone all these wonderful panelists who answered, they all mentioned people. It's such a huge crux of what we do is being able to work with, interact with, and make friends with people. I don't think anyone here would have this issue, but so many people in any artistic field, in game audio, in art or whatever, really do want to hunker down and just do the thing. But to do the thing, to make the sound, to make the music, to do it with is to do it with people. We ideally want to be working on teams. That is what we want to be doing, especially for working on games. We more or less have to be working in some sort of community focused way, which is really, really cool. And that's a wonderful part about this industry. It's so kind and so open. I love it. So last question before we get into audience questions. This is, we'll start with Chel, with you. I'm curious, once you find that dream project, like let's say we'll use Kine as a great example. Once you have that project, when maybe you want awards for it, so it's a great example to use. But once you have a project that you're like, yeah, I really like this, I did a great job, people really like this, are you set for life? Because a common assumption is, oh, once you have that gig, oh, they're set. Or do you need to keep hustling? Do you need to keep doing the thing?
Did I stop hustling?
You did not.
Everyone who knows me knows that oh my god. I mean, like, I will say, like, there's several things that I still want to work on a fighting game, at least like one track. I would love to do a fighting game. I would love to. There's so many things. I would like Hat in Time seems like a perfect game for me. But like I love puzzle games. It's a music based game. Like, wow, that's kind of crazy. But like, let's be real. Not everyone in the world knows Kine. Like, there's so many, like, I feel like occasionally people are like, oh my god, I love that game. And I'd be like, oh wow, thank you. But like, only so many people play that game. I don't want to do, I'm not a one-hit wonder. I certainly don't want to be a one-hit wonder. I want to be in this industry for more than X years. I want to be as long as I can until, I hope I never get bored. That's the thing. I feel like it's always fresh. There's always something new, and I kind of want to just keep going. And boy, oh howdy, everyone already knows a composer. So I feel like in order to get projects, you just have to meet a lot of people, and eventually an opportunity will come. Not then. More often than not, when you meet people, they don't need you now. They might need you in a year. And I haven't gotten past that yet.
Or their cousins.
5 years.
Sisters, brothers, uncles, mothers, fathers, cousins, sisters, brother might need you.
Literally though, like the mobile game studio that I work at, I met him a while ago, but I talked to him in May of last year, and he says, "Hey, my studio might need a composer, blah blah blah. Like the contract's running out, blah blah blah." And I would just see him at various events. I like drove him home one night, I think for PAX East, and like we'd talk about stuff because we're friends. And then like throughout the conversation, he'd be like, "Oh yeah, so how's work?" And he'd be like, "We're still trying to get funding, blah 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 blah." Right as my contract ended, I was like, panic! I have no work. What do I do? And then like May of this year, we got funding. Like, do you want to call? Do you want to get hired? I'm like, whoa, let's find out. And then now I've been doing it for a couple months. So
awesome.
It takes time. It takes also continuous nurturing. You cannot just meet someone once and then expect that to like go anywhere.
How about you, Chase? Because, a ground has 3 million players.
Yeah.
So are you done? Is it easy now?
Nope, it's not easy. It wasn't as easy. I mean, even from that, like I shipped another game. It was a mobile game. And I was thinking like, I mean, you and I chatted like briefly and I was like, hey, how do I kind of like ramp this up again? And it's never done. And this is actually one of those industries where I actually don't feel like I will ever retire in that sense. And I actually look a lot to actors and actresses. And when you look at someone like maybe like, let's say Keanu Reeves, right? And you're looking at Keanu Reeves, and if you didn't know he was in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure before the third one, you're just wondering he was in The Matrix. If that's where you know him from, and then you see him in maybe some new things from here on out, like the Netflix series on with like Miss Ali Wong and such, you're like, oh, who's this guy? And then you go back and like, whoa, he was in Rear Window and all this other stuff. You'll see the longevity and the hustle that they continue to have to do. Like, they get paid a lot, but they're not always getting called. Some dips kind of happen with their career, et cetera, et cetera. But actors and actresses like have it a lot harder. I feel like they've got to pay for the headshots. They've got to put themselves out there, audition, maybe get turned down or whatever. And we just have to kind of like create something good and pitch and just kind of like chat. But they got to do a little bit more, and they got to spend a lot more, a little bit. I wouldn't say a lot more, but the amount of money and such. So no, it doesn't stop. Even if it is like 3 million players, you're only as good as your last project.
Yes, for sure.
Any more thoughts on that, Thomas? Or
on being as good as your last project, and
on keeping the hustle going? Is it?
I don't know if we would have completed our favorite game or dream game yet, but I'll say if it's one of the ones we're working on, it's definitely not going to be done after that, because we're going to need to keep we're looking for more as we're working on them, hoping to keep the ball rolling at least until it hopefully can roll on its own a little bit.
Exactly. It's always, it doesn't end. And in fairness, I don't think it should.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do? You're resting your laurels. Go be an accountant. Like, why?
I love it.
The short answer is nope, not done.
Yeah, no. Never stop. Always panicking about,
yeah,
we're really busy now, but what happens in 6 months when we're broke?
Yeah.
So,
Awesome. Perfect.
Accountants are cool too. Sorry, Tiffany. I don't want to offend anyone. Well, we're not here to be accountants though right now.
All right, Chris, can we open up to questions from everybody?
Sure. We can do this anyway. I guess I should unface myself. There we go. Yeah. We can do this any way you'd like. We can have Drew scroll through and throw questions at you. You can scroll through if you're comfortable doing that and you want to cherry pick some stuff throughout. Obviously, there's a lot of questions in there. I suspect there will be not 100% of them if you want to kind of skim for some ideas. How do you want to do it?
Drew, how about we have you just kind of skim and throw stuff at us?
I have to unmute Drew. One sec. Let's see.
Power.
Drew.
Beautiful. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm just going to come from the top. People started putting a tag question for later, which I'm kind of looking for.
That would be the name of my
Okay, let's do this one here. Since networking is so important and now it's all online, what's the trick to making friends in game chat rooms, etc.? How do you stand out and convince people you're cool when everyone's just represented via chat messages?
Chel, I want to ask you first because you network 18 hours a day.
I mean, I do mine mostly over video, but at the same time, the biggest thing for all networking is a matter of consistency and recognizability. If I've probably met hundreds of people once, right? And some of them might remember me. I definitely don't remember all of them. And out of the people that I do remember, I cannot possibly expect them to remember me. We could have had a great conversation, but they've also met at GDC. God, you meet hundreds of people in the span of a week. So a matter of consistency. There are definitely. I mean, I don't necessarily have the best advice for text only stuff like Discord. Sometimes I do have video calls. I know that one of the Discords that I run is called Beats to Play Games To, and some people do some breakfast stuff in the morning, and I'm usually asleep during that. But yeah, being active in communities, actively sharing your work, actively participating in things, and this is just a game audio one. There's probably some game dev ones that you can be active in and just be. I don't know. It's just you make friends in back in the old days, you in forums, there were regulars, and they would all get to know each other. It's a matter of consistency and recognizability.
Anyone else?
I mean, Mitchell's pretty much hit the nail on the head. But at the same time, don't be afraid because we've picked up gigs from Discord, like I said earlier, but we've actually picked up bigger, in inverted commas, proper gigs from Discord as well.
Even the majority, I'd say. Not heavily, but it's definitely doable, yeah.
Yeah, it's just, again, talk to people. Mm-hmm. And, they can smell from a mile away when you're rocking up just very obvious. Looks like you're trying to sell something. So don't do that. But I mean, deep down, I think everyone knows. So it's the industry that we're in. We're all here to make friends, but we're all here to do what we love doing.
Love it. Yeah. Chase, do you have anything to add?
It's such a hard question to answer because it's just different for everybody. But I mean, everybody's pretty much saying the same thing. It's like, just don't be a jerk and make friends. Just as you typically kind of just remember what it was like to want to be a friend to somebody when you were a child. Maybe you went to a new school and just treat whatever new online thing as like a new school, and then just pick something different. I find that probably picking something different than, the typical, hey, I need a job or some gaming auto stuff. Try to find out what's something that's interesting to you. One of your friends will probably tell you about it. Hey, I thought it was cool that you headbutt your Game Boy at 8 years old and you broke it the first time. I was like, oh, cool. You want to talk about that? We could talk about that. And you never know. And then you just pick up a conversation or wherever it goes. But that's really how you make friends, is something that is connecting to someone else, and there's always an opportunity.
I love it.
Can I jump in real quick? Going on what Chase said earlier about having knowledge and knowing about games and game industry, that goes a long way, especially online, because it's harder to have that more personable interaction with someone because you're not face to face and you're not, it's a little bit of detached, right? So having that depth of knowledge, and even knowing about, if you are talking to someone because you have an interest in trying to work with them, knowing about the game, that doesn't mean you have to play it and know everything inside out, but if you can see it from the developer's point of view in terms of what they're trying to achieve or what they're trying to express with it, and you can find affinity in that, goes a very long way.
Yep. Awesome. Drew, let's get another, if that's all right.
Yeah, so how targeted should you be in terms of your industry area, indie or AAA, or area of audio, whether it's music or sound design, implementation, etc.?
Chase, let's throw that at you first.
I mean, unless you are blessed with gold and knowledge and power of everything, and you're omnipresent, you're most likely not going to hit a AAA thing right off the bat. Forget what you want to get into. So you're going to have to work your way up through the indie trenches, get in there, understand some things. And like I said, you're going to know your strengths and weaknesses through the game jams, or by just doing a self-timer. I found that in that book I was mentioning, that if you have a stopwatch and you say, today I'm going to write horror music, and the way I'm going to write the horror music is based off of a word. And then you just fix on that word, and then you can go as creative as you want, such as limitations to what you got to do, and then see how long it takes you to write that horror music and whatever. You get faster and faster and faster, and then you realize that this is where you kind of are. But a lot of the work is going to come from indie. Then you move up. You can move up fairly fast. It just depends on if you're doing everything right and you're talking to the right people. But unless Thomas was saying, your mother's brother's cousin's dog's parakeet, who also has the snake, who also know the ghost of the other former person who came back to the chick and said, hey, hi, how you doing? Chick, I mean, as in a chicken. But yeah, that's really not going to happen in that form. It's a long road. That's basically what I'm saying.
Awesome. Anyone else?
I mean, I already kind of I had the whole thing about the hourglass approach, but I guess to iterate more on that is partially know what you want, and partially how to get there. I don't want to go to Game SoundCon in LA unless I'm a speaker there, because I don't need to network there, because no one there is going to hire me. I mostly need to meet devs, which is why I go to GDC, and I hope to go to Gamescom at some point. When I talk to devs, I personally want to know various people. I remember I met a lawyer. I'm I need to know this person. Now we're cool. And then she loves games. But the point is that if you are wondering why aren't I getting any work, and you only know other audio people and you're a composer, that's definitely it's a tricky thing. You gotta go into different ponds sometimes in order to get new fish.
Ooh, what a good analogy. I love it.
Yeah, lovely.
All right, Drew, let's get another.
So how did you deal with your reel or your portfolio for someone who's just started and it only has game jams, etc., on their portfolio, how do you get started?
Thomas and Seth, I know you got good stuff on this.
Well, if anyone's actually bothered to go look at our website, you'll notice that it's hideously old and doesn't actually have any of the current games that we've worked on. It's still, it's one of those things. We're always like, oh yeah, we should redo the website, do a branding push and all that. We've been lucky that we keep getting gigs, and we're like, well, I don't necessarily want to spend time and money on doing that, even though I know we should.
We will, but yeah,
we will. It
really hasn't been a problem ever. If anything, people still go back to it and say it's good work. So I'd say doing redesigns of things that look good, because people see it and they say, oh wow, this looks great, it sounds great. That's great. Also, if you have your own work to show, that's good as well.
So yeah,
anything, and just make sure it shows off your work well, because then people don't really judge too much the credits beyond that.
I would say from a baseline, rescores and reworks of stuff is a good way to do it if you haven't had any experience. It helps if you go and get permission from the people that you are reworking. Also, because it's a good point of contact. I mean, it's still part of networking. And beyond that, even for us, people land on our website and they see things like, oh, wow, that's great. But it does lead to confusion. Sometimes people are like, oh, wow, you worked on, that game. I'm like, no, we didn't. That's why there's rescores in the title.
And sometimes they're like, oh, well, it sounds good enough.
But that's the thing. Like, if you can fool them and they think it's legit, then they think you're of that quality. And then beyond that, I would say, even if you do have stuff that is outdated or may not be necessarily relevant, it's a starting point. If you can get that in front of someone and they look at you and they take you seriously and you can start the conversation, then go, great. That's usually when we start saying, here's stuff that we've actually done, and we'll send extra demos that are more in line with what the person may be looking for.
Also, someone mentioned Real Talk. That's really good. They've looked at ours off of Real Talk as well and gave some great advice that we pushed up. So that was helpful as well. They're really good.
Fantastic
and really helpful,
beans.
So.
But yeah, don't be shy. I know that's a hard thing for some people, but get your stuff in front of people. Ask questions. Take feedback on board. And it's hard because, sometimes people don't want to be honest with you because they don't want to hurt your feelings, which is fine. That's why you need to ask a lot of people and see if you can get good at identifying like the key points that are actually things that are worth changing or things that need to be changed. Because a lot of the time you just get, oh yeah, it's great, I really like that, and it's like, well, cool, that doesn't help me.
It's good to know what you can improve on. No, that's good information. It's better than just a compliment.
Don't be shy. And again, hard because of Corona, but I like to do it in situations where you can see the person, because as Tiffany was alluding to earlier, body language goes a long way.
It does.
So when you can see someone like, oh, it's great, just like, oh, you hate it. Cool. Why? Ask why. Don't be shy. If it hurts, it hurts. Just keep going.
Yeah. If you're going to get your feelings hurt, at least know what you can do to fix it.
Exactly. So next time you don't get your feelings hurt.
Definitely.
Yeah, spot on. Anyone else?
Yeah, actually, I'll have to actually say that the point of getting into making friends, especially if you make friends with like others that really respect your stuff, even if it's someone that doesn't deal with like audio, you can get like an objective feeling versus a subjective thing from other people, or really give you a way to kind of bring it up. People kind of know the medium. Like I did an audio test for like Naughty Dog, and I had a videographer look at it. He was familiar with understanding like what the sound was kind of being. And I was like, look at this from the perspective of film and see how the audio kind of works. And he was like, this is great. Then I had someone who really loved that game, who wasn't in the industry at all, gave me the perspective of like, oh man, I felt like this. He's coming from the player's perspective. So any type of feedback objectively that you can kind of get will help you tremendously. And then check your ego. It doesn't matter how kind of big you get, you're always going to be learning something, and someone's always going to know something more than you. So don't be afraid to ask even where you are on the echelon ladder, that you need help. And I've been to Game Sound Con, and I've asked people that I feel have definitely surpassed me in the career time of there's the different paths. Hey, what do you think of this? As permission grants, like don't just force your work onto people. Just say like, hey, would you mind checking this out? And Game Sound Con, I think this year has like a music demo derby, so it's like $25 this year or something. So the first time it's super cheap, by the way, because usually it's hella expensive. But being there, you can gain more people to kind of get peer review stuff, and that'll help build up your portfolio more. So you're not just iterating and dealing with stuff by yourself. And that really sucks. And I've been in those positions before. And before COVID, there were like meetups and such you can kind of go to in your areas, and then not everybody has that. But now those Discords do exist, and you can have that type of community. So just be open to a lot of criticism, and you'll grow and you'll grow and you'll grow fast.
Sometimes people will be like, "Oh, this is really good," and you'll be like, "Oh, really?" I was stressed. Like sometimes it helps you just move on and get something you were stressed about. Something's getting in your way of moving forward. Someone can just give you what you need.
That little bit of positive reinforcement, and it helps you move on. Yeah. Piggybacking on what Chase said as well. Generally, I don't like to ask audio people what they think, because we think differently because we're audio people. And at the end of the day, depending on what you're trying to do, obviously if you want to work AAA or something like that, audio people's opinions matter because they're going to hire you, right? Game developers generally aren't audio people. They enjoy video games as a medium. They enjoy the audio in them because it helps, move everything along, and it's part of the experience. Exactly. So you need to gauge reactions. And another thing leading on from that is eventually if you do start working for these people, you again have to remember they're not audio people. They may not be musicians. They don't understand the things that we do, and they don't think the way that we do. So communicating with them in terms of what they want and actually them getting that out of you and you delivering the best possible product can be tricky because, people can't express themselves if they're not familiar in that field. So the more people you ask that aren't necessarily audio people, I think is good, because it helps hone that kind of vocabulary and your understanding of what it is that they want and what they're saying.
Nice.
So, I think the question was about like reels and website and stuff like that. If you're only doing game jams so far, I would still recommend that you buy a domain and like a website builder. I personally hate the one that I'm currently using, but no one ever has heard of it, so you're probably fine. If you think you don't have enough for a reel, you only need about a minute. You need about a minute for usually sound design, but I also recommend like maybe about that. I had like a minute 30 for music. Write that much, write different music. You should at some point have enough music through your game jams, and also like through I don't have a reel currently. It was super out of date, and I took it off my website because I didn't feel like making a new one. Now I'm just like, here are my full albums. So I just say about a minute and a half through your game jams, maybe a couple of songs that you think would work well over other video games, like a rescore kind of thing. Right now I'm looking at my website. I have a title page, which you could theoretically just combine. I have projects, about, contact, and that's all you really need to start out. So also I would recommend that you actually pay for the domain name instead of at Wix site or whatever. That's just my recommendation. But fill up your SoundCloud, fill up your Bandcamp and Spotify. Just write music. It doesn't matter if it's bad. Fill your SoundCloud with garbage.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice.
Definitely sure.
Drew, let's take some more if we got time.
We're actually gonna give y'all a chance to meet one another. Chris, you want to explain this?
Oh yeah, I'm so excited about this. This is my favorite part. Oh man. Uh-oh. In fact, it doesn't even mean an end to questions. In a way, it's a beginning of questions. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna split them into breakout rooms. That of course just means we take our full pile of still about 50 of y'all. Heck yeah. Break you up into rooms where I'm gonna take out of literally our panelists. Each one's gonna be a different breakout room. So you'll have a smaller pot of 10. You can still attack them with questions and be like, what's your answer that we didn't get to in the big room? These will be self-managed. So if you want to change tables, picture we're having a Butcher's Dog live event, whatever, just come back to main. You can use leave meeting in the corner. It'll give you an option to leave the breakout room. You'll come back to main. You'll be like, Chris, I actually wanted to talk to this panelist. And I'll just redirect you over to that room and it'll be fine. People might shuffle. That's okay. I'm also, sometimes you might be in breakout room things historically where people mass shuffle every 10, 20 minutes. We're kind of nearing the end of time, so we're probably going to keep this a little more informal. I'm not going to force shuffle anybody. Just chill with your table. If you want to just mosey, be like, hey, I'm going to go mingle elsewhere. No one's going to be offended, and just bounce back to me and I'll redirect you. And I'll also add as one last asterisk on that, if you just want to network and chat, and maybe you're not even an audio person, you're just kind of here because IGDA is awesome and you love us, you can also just bail on your audio discussion table back to main and just trade talk LinkedIn and game dev questions. I'm also going to stop recording for this part. We not broadcast the breakout room stuff. I might peek in them for like 2 seconds to get a muted chat for our video summary at the end. We're going to be like, we did breakout rooms. But I want to encourage you to feel comfortable to talk about stuff more openly here when we break out room things. So that's the summary. Any questions about that?
I think Tiffany's got a question.
Yeah, Tiffany's.
I probably need to unmute. Why do you think Tiffany has a question? I can't actually...
See SpongeBob arms going crazy.
Hey guys, so for those of you who haven't been to one of our networking things here at IGDA LA, a really cool thing to do is go around the room and give your TLDR.